Yeah, at the back, Aidan.
Hi, my name's Aidan. I think that one of the reasons everyone wants to vote off is because they really like Obama. It's really cool, and it's really funny, and it's very charismatic. And unfortunately, we're going to have to ask you to put that aside for a moment. So don't make judgments on his moral character, because regardless of whether or not you think he met his promises, he is undoubtedly a good person who has done some good things. But that's not what we're asking ourselves in this debate. And we've heard a lot of examples from either side. It's been this game of tennis with facts and statistics. People are like, oh, here's something that he did, here's something he didn't do, so on and so forth. It's difficult to decide which one's more important. I mean, you could just pick the biggest one, which presumably would be Obamacare, because that's the most people. But that's not clear either. So when asking yourself about whether or not he met the promises, I think the best thing to do is look at the broader promises he made. So the biggest one, he would change politics. He would bridge the gap between Democrats and Republicans, and he would end the partial nature of American politics, bring it back to a democracy instead of just two sides constantly playing mud at each other. We ask ourselves whether or not he failed on that promise or not he succeeded. Given the silent speaking, I'm going to tell you that he's failed. Firstly, there have been more rebellions in his rule. They shut down Congress for like a week or so. Government literally came to a halt because he was unable to work with different people. Senators like Mitch McConnell regularly led rebellions against him because he constantly insulted the other side. He was unwilling to work the other side. That is the very nature of partial politics, when you refuse to work them just because of who they are. But secondly, he caused divisions not only in his party, but in the other party. His refusal to work with Republicans caused a rift, which led to the rise of people like Ted Cruz and the Tea Party, which has caused further divisions within the Republican camp and caused all the problems we see on how they treat them. But even within the Democrat camp, they can't agree on what their standing is. I'll take you in a moment. The rise of Sanders and Clinton, of the establishment versus the new type of politics, has only gone to prove that he couldn't even keep his own house, let alone the House of the Union.
If Obama had actually achieved, in an ideal world, all the things that he promised, do you think it's more or less likely that you were going to get the reaction that you think is so bad in the first place from the Republicans and from the likes of the Tea Party?
I think those are two separate questions. I'm not asking or answering whether or not his reactions were good or bad. That's not saying that this debate attempts to prove. What I'm trying to tell you is that he said he would do one thing, which is bring politics closer together. He has empirically failed on that account, and that was the greatest promise that he ever made. All the other examples that come out of things he did are all merely sort of results of that particular essence of the problem. And because he failed to bring politics back together and only seek to make it more apart, we can only assume that he failed to deliver on his promises.
Thanks for that speech, Aidan. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in opposition of the motion? Oh, Olivia Rosal. Okay, Olivia, we haven't heard from you for a long time.
So that was probably going to be funnier. Apologies for that. Jordan tells us that lying and not keeping your promises is bad because that means that people don't trust in politics anymore and they're not engaged in politics anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at whether Obama's constituents trust politics anymore and are more or less engaged in politics, and I'm going to say they are more engaged in politics, therefore he cannot possibly have lied if Jordan is correct. The first thing I'm going to point out is that people feel like change has happened under Obama. People feel like he has generally kept his promises. Insofar as they acknowledge that he has not, it is probably either because they agree with him that maybe some Republicans really want to cling to their guns, or alternatively because they think that to whatever extent he has failed, he is not morally culpable for it, right? We say that if people still continue to vote for him to such an extent that he was re-elected in a way that we don't think that Nick Clegg was, for example, we say that people probably don't think that he was a big liar. I also point out that he's also made it much more likely that you do get other sorts of more democratic legislation in the future. Note that he made the principle for Obamacare possible, and now Democrats can continue to debate about the technicalities about it. That could not have happened before Obama. That could not have happened if he had not made those promises and tried to meet them as best as possible. Note that you have Bernie Sanders that could not have happened before Obama. Note that even Hillary Clinton's campaign is all about not ruining everything that Obama has achieved. It is all based on the fear of what's going to happen if we undermine all the progress that we've made. All of this assumes, no thanks, all of this assumes that a lot of progress has happened. If that is what people feel, if they believe in him more, if they're more engaged in politics as a result, we say that by Jordan's own logic, probably he has not lied and he has not met his promises in the way that most people relate to promises. We think that it is better, we say that even just the way that things are right now, right? Like Proposition also said, people are more obsessed with race now than ever before in the States. I think this is a good thing that people are talking about it. I don't actually believe that police brutality has got worse against African Americans. I think it's that we're talking about it more, right? And I think that is a huge progress that we've made. No thanks, sorry. And I think a lot of that is thanks to Obama, right? The second thing, no thanks, that I want to point out, because I have very little time, is about engagement. So I have spent a lot of evenings in the past week looking at Obama memes, and he is really fun and cool and charismatic. And I think that that in itself is a sign that people do not feel like he's hugely failed his promises. People don't feel betrayed by him. People are more likely to engage in politics as a result of that. It makes it more approachable. And specifically, it makes politics more approachable for minorities in America, right? It shows people just how powerful the African-American vote can be, just how powerful the female African-American vote can be in particular, just how powerful the Latino vote can be in particular. I think that all of these things show a huge amount of progress in America. Sure, not all of the technicalities were met. I don't think that people share that understanding of what a promise means because he got re-elected, because all of these issues are now far easier to talk about and far easier to achieve than they were before. Sorry for the lack of jokes, but that's a speech.
Thanks for that speech, Olivia. Is there anybody who would like to speak again in opposition of the motion? Abstention, sorry. Okay, Sal, easy, change your mind.
Someone over there?
Well, we'll do another round. We'll do another round of motions. Okay.
All right. Cool. All good? Yeah, I'm already good time. Great. Okay, guys. So, really simply, in this debate, you can cheat really easily by using a phone. Turns out PolitiFacts has a list of every single Obama promise that he made in his campaigns from 2008 to 2012. So you can tell the exact number that he actually kept, and the exact number he failed on. Turns out he kept about 45%, broke 22%, and compromised 25%. Depending on how you want to see that, he's either brilliant and has succeeded on the vast majority of promises that he's made, or he's terrible and has actually lost out on the majority, depending on what the compromise should be. So ultimately, what I'm going to say is this. That's irrelevant. The number of promises kept, the type of promises kept, are irrelevant for this debate. Because there's only one promise that he really made in his campaign trail, which is one of hope that people can try to cling to. And it's one promise on which, the American people believe that, now, they are in a significantly different society to the one they were in 2008. And the question is whether that is true or not. So the question that you could ask yourselves, and speaking from ascension, I'm just going to frame this question as the one that needs to be asked more than anything else in this debate, is not which promises were kept, which promises weren't kept, but is the average American person better off now than they were in 2008? In those terms then, is the average American person more engaged in the political process? Is the average American person richer than they were in 2008? Or, given that there was an economic recession, likely to have been richer than, the alternative president that could have existed at that time? Further to that, is the average American person more likely to believe in the office of the president and the offices of government they buy into to begin with? And are they more likely to then engage with those facilities of the state? Is the average American who's the worst off, right? Or the worst off American, not the average American, so I think it makes sense. The worst off American, are they in a situation now where they have more support from the state and are less likely to be absolutely screwed over? These are the questions that you need to ask yourself in this debate to be able to truly determine whether Obama kept the only promise that matters, which is one of hope and one of change. That is what this debate is, and that is what you should like to cling to in this debate. So I beg you to abstain.
Thanks for that speech. We'll now move on to the third round because it seems like quite a lot of interest. I'll remind you that you can win pork and chocolate, so quite incentive. And I'll keep an eye on the balconies as well because there seems to be people up there. Is there anybody who would like to speak in proposition of the motion? Anybody? Nice. Okay.
Can I just say something that won't be 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's absolutely fine to just have even 30 seconds.
Okay. I just want to talk about some of his achievements on foreign policy. Despite the fact that you said that he didn't deliver on one time a day, he has reversed torture, which many international amnesty, many human rights groups have called on governments to the fact that torture is it's unconstitutional, as the Asian so despite having not actually delivered on that, he has some gestures that you can learn that. You can also argue that he killed Osama bin Laden. That was good. He also supported the rebel groups of Muammar Gaddafi, which helped eliminate his 43-year dictatorship. And he passed the Affordable Care Act, which helped 32 million uninsured Americans being able to afford healthcare without dying. And finally, he passed the American Recovery Act, $7 billion bill, which created $7 million. So I think in light of his achievements, despite the fact that he hasn't achieved everything, you can say he has done the best he can do.
Thanks for that. So is there anybody else who would like to speak in the final round in opposition to the motion? So anybody who feels that... Yeah, okay. So if there's anybody else who would like to speak in prop instead of opposition second. Not? Yeah, and
I've rolled it on field actually, because I just didn't want to make a speech, and I would rather have spoken in abstention. I guess, like, the only thing
I just kind of want to say that I think this is a question wrongly asked, because I think when we elect people, we don't elect dictators and violence to just take over government and get to do what we want. So I think when we vote in Western democracies in general, we acknowledge that we're not voting someone who can achieve everything that they want to. And I think a lot of people may sometimes believe that, which is why you get a lot of the kind of flippant clegg bashing that we see today. Yeah, so I think it's a weird question to ask, considering the truth of how democracy works. And that's why I'm speaking in extension, because it means that I don't agree with either side. Put your hand up.
Wasn't the specific thing about his campaign that, as opposed to other politicians that you might not necessarily be able to trust and might not deliver on their promises, his promises were change that people could believe in?
That's a very vague promise to make. Like, a change that someone could believe in, it could mean anything. He may have made change, he may not have, but yeah, it's a very vague kind of campaign. So you might as well have just said, "You'll the bird," but it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thanks for that wonderful closing speech. I would now like to move on to the closing, summarising speeches of our panel. I would like to remind you that you can't offer any POIs during these speeches. They're going to be 3 minutes each, and we'll start with the opposition side.
Proposition has been a little bit confusing in this debate, right? So we get a couple of weird contradictions. We're told that we on opposition don't understand how politics works, because clearly Obama knew about Republicans before, and yet we're told that that means if Obama makes a promise, the voters expect him to make good on all of his promises, or they'll hate him and they will deny the progressive, or they'll stop believing that progressive change can happen. That's kind of not true, because of the fact that, as has been pointed out, most people don't think politicians are like superheroes that can come in and do whatever they want. And even like politicians that are still in vogue today, like Ronald Reagan, promised things that he didn't deliver on, like Star Wars defense. Like, we don't think that people think that politicians can deliver on everything that they necessarily promise, and that they somehow lose the dream that the politician had if they don't achieve everything that they said. I mean, if the progressive dream really was dead, then Sanders couldn't have come and took Obama's hope and change message and amplified it in the same way that Jeb Bush has taken the enthusiasm for his campaign and amplified it with the exclamation mark at the end of his poster. But so we don't think that people have lost faith in the progressive dream, because there are some promises that Obama has said that he hasn't delivered. What's the other contradiction? They say people think Obama hasn't done very much, and yet other people think that he's literally the devil because he has done too much against what they want. And this is another false contradiction. You can't have both things. The fact that Obama has promised a lot of things that he wants and to move towards and that he wants to achieve is something that a lot of people have bought into and have seen as really useful. That's the reason why some people villainize him and other people respect him a lot. Notably, both Democratic candidates have used him for cover whenever they come under attack, because they've recognized the fact that he represents this change towards progressive ideals, this change towards the sorts of things that they believe in. And the third thing we say is that Obama, that we've heard this from Rob, that Obama could only have succeeded if he's achieved everything that he's promised, but he also has to work with Congress, because otherwise he alienates people. Those two things, as they've sort of been tacitly agreed, is just mutually contradictory. You cannot have both. We think that the metric isn't any of these three things, right? It's what I pointed out earlier on, and what Foss has also pointed out in his speech, which is the idea that if, given the restrictions on power that he has, given the restrictions that he has on what he's allowed to do in office, given the extra restrictions that Obama specifically has because of being the first black president, because of the time he came into the office, and because of the fact that he came in when there was an economic and also military strategy-wise crises, we think the metric should be, has he done the best towards achieving those progressive ideals that he can? And has he managed to set up a platform in which people believe that we can get closer and closer to that because he has achieved the best that he can? And we think that he has, when he's changed the discussion and the narrative we've had on the African American community through changing the way policing is approached by police officers, by changing the approach we've had to the LGBT community, by changing the way we look at hate crime, to accept that in its definition, and to also try and take down things like don't ask and don't tell. Because he's moved us forward in the best possible way he can towards the dreams that he promised us, we think the voters have accepted that, and he can't be said to fail. Very proud to vote.
Okay, so let me tell you more than just star signs. Let me tell you some concrete things. When Obama came into office, during his presidential transition, he was having a brainstorming meeting with his chief of staff and other important people, saying, what are going to be the things I do in my first term, my signature accomplishments? And one of his chiefs came to him and he said, your accomplishment is going to be preventing the second Great Depression. He did it. As Jordan said, this occurred during the campaign, meaning that some of the promises Obama had made before the economic collapse could not be met. Because he didn't have the opportunity, he didn't have the capital, he didn't have the political capacity. Stopping an economic spiral was too important. How do you have Obamacare if the healthcare industry has collapsed? How do you improve racial justice if disadvantaged minorities do not have jobs? How can you regulate financial industries if they literally don't exist? All of Obama's promises had to come first from dealing with the economic crisis, had to spring from his stimulus. Everything else was part of that. Lots of his time was tied up with that, meaning that was a movement towards all of his promises. That has kept his promises in the game. Obama overcame that. He overcame the economic collapse. He also overcame the massive Republican obstructionism we've already heard about, which, as we've already heard quite convincingly, was begun by the Republicans with their secret meetings, with their rejection of his mandate, with their rejection of any sort of change. He did his best, but with that, you can't necessarily get things done. And so we've got to think about what a promise is. We've heard a lot about this, but I think for a politician, you've got to say it's reasonable that a promise is a statement of intent. It isn't an absolute prediction that the day after your inauguration, everything you say will be so. It's you saying that you intend this to happen. It's saying you will give everything you have to make it happen. And that's what Obama did, and that's what Obama said. But he had too much to overcome to get everything done. Some people seem to think that any broken of trust in democracy. But it's a basic reality that promises aren't actualities. They aren't predictions. They are statements of intent. And people realizing that is a good thing. Voters should be cynical. Voters should recognize the truth. But on the ultimate promise, which we've heard in the Great Son speech, of legacy, of the ability to make sure that these things will eventually come to be, he has hold true. Because Clinton and Sanders are both saying they're defending Obama's legacy. They're both working with the Obama coalition. And Obama's other promises, which he couldn't keep, will come to pass because of the work he did. I call that keeping a promise. I'm telling you that a politician shouldn't be judged on, just a tick box. They should be judged on what they did and the conditions they did it in. You might like Obama, you might not, but he had a wing of government that hated him and an economy that hated everyone. Obama did change America. He did bring hope to people that America could be changed. He did, he could, he can, he did it, and that's why I urge everyone to please vote off, because he kept his promises.
Thanks, Ross, for the opposition side with that fine speech. I would now like to call the speakers of proposition to close with their arguments with each of doing that speech.
So it's actually kind of unclear what Obama could have done to make opposition think he did fail. Because according to one speaker, all he had to do was be a symbol and get elected. So he's good. He can then do nothing for 8 years and he's fine. Second speaker's like, well, promise is a statement of intent. So as long as he intended to do it, he's kept his promise. Again, it's quite hard to understand how he fails on that metric. I would note, however, at the point where a constitutional law scholar promises to do things that anyone who has read the Constitution knows you can't do, he never intended to do that thing because he knew it was impossible. He knew it was a lie when he made it, therefore he had no intent. But so in this debate, we're debating, like, do promises matter versus are they going to be symbols of beliefs? Note that is not how Obama approached the election, because you don't get elected by promising your base things that show you believe the same things that your base will vote for you regardless, almost always, because they do believe it. Rather, elections are won on the swing. Elections are won on your ability to convince that 5 or 10% of people in the middle to switch to your side and make it 51 or 53% for Obama, which is all he ever won by, and give it to you. He swung these people with very specific promises. He swung these people by saying things, if you like your health insurance plan, you can keep it and it won't change. He won these people by promising them, your insurance premiums will come down by $2,500. That may not sound like something that's important to people in the room. That was important to a lot of the people who made up that 53 and that 51%. And Obama failed on things that he promised them and which they trusted him and gave him his votes for. So yes, the fact that the base still likes Obama might be true. That doesn't mean he's kept his promises. Note the base isn't necessarily happy. Now they're out believing even crazier promises from Bernie Sanders, because that's not what Bernie Sanders has to do to up the ante on himself. Voters aren't more cynical, they're even more gullible. So they've also told us it's okay, because Obama tried to work with the other side. When pressed for examples of this, they say, well, when he encountered opposition, he found ways to work around them. That's not trying to work with the other side. That is giving up on working with the other side. The issue here is that even in 2008, which is when he made his speech insulting the religious beliefs of Americans who disagree with him, and that they cling to their religion and cling to their guns, he made that in 2008. That is part of how he alienated voters and how voters turned against him in the 2010 election. That is why Obama then faced so much Republican obstructionism going forwards, because he alienated enough voters, and Republicans are accountable to those voters. If all Obama did was deliver economic recovery and good things, the Republicans would never be able to get away with opposing him at every turn. Rather, it was because Obama made speeches where he insulted and did not work with the other side, which meant that voters rewarded Republicans for not working with him because they were unhappy with him. That is Obama putting limits on himself. That is Obama doing a bad job. That is Obama failing to bring the country together, failing to live up to his promises, failing to be a symbol of hope, failing to deliver on a promise that motivated a lot of that 53 or 51% of bringing America together. If you believe that Obama worked in other ways with executive actions, note that all of those are reversible the next time there's another Republican president. That's not progress, that's fake progress. To come back to 4 Lions, Obama promised everyone a ride on Nemesis. What he gave them was rubber dinghy rapids. Don't believe that's him keeping his promise.
Rubber dinghy rapids is a good ride. Sorry. I don't think Obama is the devil either. That would be a great anticlimax. There might be some economists among you, and some of you may have been able to pick out a way that Obama could have foresaw the economic crisis, damaging some of his promises. And that's because it happened before he became president of the United States. George W. Bush had already spent $8 trillion on bailouts and negotiated that with Obama before Barack Obama even became president. And of course, he still maintained all of the promises that he made during his campaign in his inauguration speech. In terms of political difficulties, he was elected as a Democrat in every sense. All the time. You want to know the main reason why he didn't have Congress on his side is because he lost the 2010 midterms. You want to know how many presidents had an opposition? All of them. And some of them, were even meaner than Ted Cruz. Some of them had guns. I remember the Nazis. They were really, really mean guys. And presidents overcame their brutal force. But I think one judgment beyond PolitiFact that can measure Obama's presidency is that of America's place in the world. When Khrushchev faced off against Kennedy over Cuba, Kennedy maintained his stance, and his Secretary of State said Khrushchev blinked. And I think that was really the key moment in terms of the battle between the Soviet Union and the United States. When Obama set his red lines in Syria, and then did the same thing in Ukraine and blinked, I think what we are looking at there is the decline of American power. I'm sure many of you think that American power hasn't been a great thing for the world, but I think we'll look back in time to come as America being the most powerful nation in the world with somewhat halcyon haze. And you may say that Obama opened the door for Sanders, but he also opened the door for Trump. I think that represents how deeply divided the United States is, a country that Obama promised to unite across party lines, across race lines, and in terms of financial inequality that is now worse in America than ever before. So even if you ignore the detailed areas where Obama failed, the broad brush, open change stuff, he failed on too. And I wouldn't assume that Bernie Sanders is going to sweep to power and continue his legacy, so you claim. I wouldn't assume that. And for that reason, you must vote in proposition.
Okay, so that speech concludes the actual debate tonight, but before we go on to the bar afterwards, have a couple of drinks, I would like to take another vote of how you guys feel now after the debate and see whether any of you have changed your minds.